Oh, yeah, sure.
All right.
Critical concepts.
So professional.
Thank you very much, Aldrich Sabak. Okay. The critical concepts is how are you going to break down those critical pieces. So there are pieces like praxis, decolonization. All those terms are heavy. So the second part is supposed to help break down those terms for whatever grade level you're teaching. To move on to the next part.
All right, and then,
go ahead,
and then,
man.
so the main thing is the community collaboration. So for one of the lessons we work on, for lesson 4, for example, if you have it in front of you, lesson 4 talks about when Larry Itliong was getting the unions together and getting them organized. So for the community collaboration, for lesson 4, it's actually a role-playing activity. Initially, it seems like it's just a game, but what students are doing is understanding how power takes place in the labor movement, how the manongs and manongs were getting exploited. And you see that as they go through this activity, what happens is like there's a conflict there, there's a problem, and they realize eventually that the only way through it is if they come together and have some form of people power, if they organize each other. So for lesson 4 specifically, you see that through that role-playing activity. Students are imitating what it's like to work in the fields by harvesting crops, pulling it together. And at the end of the day, they start making some money and then less money, and then there's some divide and conquer happening. So they get an insight specifically on what it's like, but most importantly, what's needed to get through that, to solve that problem, right? And then of course, the last part of the lesson?
The last part is conclusive dialogue. And so we have to process this whole entire lesson that's taking place. And so we kind of leave with a lot of discussion and dialogue and I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for words. So the way we end this entire unit, this entire curriculum, is students are going to create their own stories of justice. And so they are going to pick a topic, an injustice they see in the world, and create maybe a fictional or maybe a nonfiction story of how someone has tackled that system of oppression. And we have a time in that conclusion to share with each other, to process together, and then celebrate our work together. The last slide is the additional learning tools, which are Don's 3 essential questions. I don't know if you'd like to talk about that.
So there's some additional resources there. Some of them are Don's original resources, and of course the essential questions that I mentioned on the last panel, and then Filipino-American timeline, and then also some actual like readings and things. We also have a couple of articles in there specifically about the ethnic studies praxis story plot, just so you know that it's legit, I think. Even though we created it, it's still legit.
It's still legit.
Yes.
And this whole work is a labor of love and process, and I'm really glad to have worked with this team.
Yeah, we have a solid, well, you all could see it on your phones. You can look at it on your computers at home. The idea is that we wanted to also create something beautiful for teachers, because sometimes we always like focus on the actual like materials that we're giving the students. But we also wanted the teachers to feel inspired, and so that's why it's so pretty and thought out and all of that, because we really want to make sure that the teachers feel like that they can take on this endeavor, because teaching this book can be as simple as reading it, or it can actually inspire. And that's the goal, is to have these lessons inspire students to do something with their own lives, with their families and their communities. Questions? Questions?
Gail.
Can you share the link again?
Oh, sure. Okay, it's tiny. It is tiny. tinyurl.com/J4JT curriculum folder. So that will be posted on Facebook once I sit down in one of these chairs. And then it will also be on the Journey for Justice Bridge and Delta website. You can get it there. Maybe Little Manila can put it on their website. PEP will have it on their website. And it is a completely free resource. You're getting over 100 pages of resource. And it is a 2-week lesson if you teach 60 to 90 minutes a day. It could potentially be longer than that, or you can choose one lesson. We talked about this, like you could choose one lesson and teach it. We encourage you to teach the whole unit, but there are standalones. So you could just pick up one of the lessons and teach it. Yeah, Gail.
So if you're a teacher and you don't have that much time, are there instructions in there to tell you how maybe you can condense the information, or what are the best places to start if maybe you only have like 3 days or 4 days?
If you only have 3 or 4 days, you can pick out of any of the lessons. I mean, really, I think definitely you want an intro lesson, and you want a lesson to address the problem, and then you want a lesson that, like where it culminates in an event where they can apply the book. That's going to be important. We don't really instruct specifically on how to do that. I'm with Art. We give concepts, and the teacher should make decisions about what works for their classroom. Even though we do give some pretty step-by-step instructions in the curriculum, but we want to encourage teachers to have the agency to be able to do that. Your context matters. Like, if you know that your students can handle more than what we gave, give them more. If you know that the students, because we wrote it for specifically middle school, but you can scaffold, to elementary, you can scaffold to high school. I'm going to teach a couple of lessons at the college level. It just really depends, and I think it's important, like to be able to give some freedom to the teachers to be able to do that.
Yeah, so there's freedom, but there's also step-by-step instructions that could be very helpful for a lot of teachers.
Yay.
So if you're a teacher, and let's say you go by textbook and you don't have freedom because of your district, and you have to go by certain text or some certain, way that the district approves, I mean, how do you get around that, and how do you still teach this? Or, I mean, any advice for teachers or educators who really want to bring and use this, but might have restrictions placed on them?
Just close your door. I'm just kidding. I was joking.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah, so that's one way, and I do that all the time. But I would say that if you look at the guiding questions and all the elements of the lessons, they align with Common Core. I think in a lot of spaces I've been to, we've discussed how ethnic studies was Common Core before Common Core. Like critical thinking, critical analysis, some very, very heavy skills and concepts that can be covered definitely. So I think that if anyone wants to question how relative, how rigorous it is, it's extremely rigorous to like really see this. And I think like in a lot of schools, we teach students halfway, but we don't never teach them all the way in how to really liberate yourselves, your community, how to understand how like this knowledge can be used to realistically free yourself. Your mind, literally people in your community, that knowledge.
I think one of the benefits is that working with 3 credentialed teachers who are, like elementary, middle, high school, they know what they can get away with in their classes, and so we took a lot of that experience and created a curriculum that is totally legit, and rigorous. Rigorous, this word rigorous, right? But so they actually teach the story plot. They start in 3rd grade. Is it 3rd grade? Yeah, 3rd grade, all the way up to college, they teach the story plot. We just made it ethnic studies, praxis story plot, right? So we didn't do anything that they wouldn't do. We just did it better, right? And then also, the praxis itself is the scientific method with a purpose. And so we really thought through, this is going to be rigorous. We're going to make it rigorous. We're going to make it relevant. We're going to make it responsive. And we're going to make sure that people actually use it in a way that's going to create some kind of transformative opportunities for young people. And so it's going to bring me to some of those districts. I'll talk to them because I think it's important that districts who are not actually allowing teachers to teach this book are actually breaking the law. Because Common Core is not supposed to be scripted curriculum. They should be allowed to make the choice on what they will teach. So there is a problem with that. I'm sounding like all about policy, but there's some truth to that. And so I want to be mindful that Common Core was supposed to open up the ability for teachers to teach things in diverse ways. and teach it in multiple forms so that students could think of answers in multiple ways. That's sort of the original Common Core thinking. And that's what we're supposed to be having in our schools. And those of you who are like, the new math, y'all are arguing about the new math. Why do we have to answer it 5 different ways? And that's sort of the thinking around this kind of work or change in curriculum, is that teachers should be allowed to teach it in multiple ways. And so hopefully, one, they adopt the book, or they just use the book in their classroom, and then they use lessons like this, because these lessons actually can be adopted to other books as well. We focus specifically on Larry Itliong, and that's what we wanted to make sure was in our heart, and so we wanted to make sure that was the key. But these lessons can be adapted to other books as well.